ones.
Sorry, Prabhuji, go ahead.
The author of Srimad Bhagavatam gives a direct answer to such inquiries. He says that the Lord Krishna is the origin of all creations. He is not only the creator of the universe, but the destroyer as well. The manifested cosmic nature is created by a certain period by the will of Lord. It is maintained for some time, then it is annihilated by his will. Therefore, the supreme will is behind all cosmic activities. Of course, there are atheists of various categories who do not believe in a creator, but that is due to a poor fund of knowledge. The modern scientist, for example, has created space satellites, and by some arrangement or other, these satellites are thrown into the outer space to fly for some time at the control of the scientist who is far away. Similarly, all the universes with innumerable stars and planets are controlled by the intelligence of the personality of God.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Bharti Mataji, Bharti Madan Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji.
मेरी आवाज आ रही है प्रभुजी?
बिल्कुल
In Vedic literature,
आवाज आ रही है लेकिन दृश्य नहीं आ रहा है.
Okay, Prabhuji, I was cooking in the kitchen. Okay. In Vedic literature, it is said that the absolute truth personality of Godhead is the chief amongst all living personalities. All living beings, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to the smallest ant, are individual living beings. And above Brahma, there are even other living beings with individual capacities. And the personality of Godhead is also a similar living being. And he is an individual. तो थोड़ा बड़ा कर सकते हैं, ज़्यादा छोटा है. Thank you, please. Thank you so much. And he is an individual and other living beings. And he is an individual as are the other living beings. But the supreme laws or the supreme living being has the greatest intelligence, and he possesses supermost inconceivable energy of all different varieties. If a man's brain can produce a space satellite, one can very easily imagine how brains higher than man can produce similarly wonderful things which are far superior. The reasonable person will easily accept this argument, but there are stubborn atheists who would never agree. Shula. Vyasadeva, however, at once accepts the supreme intelligence as the Parameshwara. He offers his respectful obeisances unto the supreme intelligence, addressed as the Para or the Parameshwar or the supreme personality of Godhead. And that Parameshwar is Shri Krishna, as admitted in Bhagavad Gita. And other scriptures delivered by Sri Vyasadeva, and specifically in this Srimad Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that there is no other Paratattva Samambonam than himself. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva at once worships the Paratattva Shri Krishna, whose transcendental activities are described in the 10th canto.
Thank you, Mataji.
सॉरी प्रभुजी, मेरी वजह से आपको
नहीं नहीं नहीं, ठीक है
ज्यादा
माता जी, कोई
मेहनत करनी पड़ी।
नहीं।
आई एम यूजिंग फोन,
दार
सो आई वाज नॉट एबल टू।
दैट्स ओके माता जी। दारुक द्वारकाधीश प्रभु।
Hare Krishna. I'm fine. Uns- Unscrupulous person go immediate.
Unscrupulous.
Unscrupulous persons go immediately to the 10th canto and especially to the 5 chapters which describe the Lord's Rasa dance. This portion of Srimad Bhagavatam is the most confidential part of the great literature. Unless one is thoroughly accomplished in the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, one is sure to misunderstood the Lord's worshipable transcendental pastimes called Rasa dance and his love affairs with the gopis. This subject matter is highly spiritual, and only the liberated persons who have gradually attained to the stage of Paramhansa can transcendentally relish the Rasa dance. Srila Vyasadeva therefore gives the reader the chance to gradually develop spiritual realization before actually relishing the essence of the pastimes of the Lord. Therefore, he purposely invokes the Gayatri mantra Dhimahi. This Gayatri mantra is meant for spiritually advanced people. When one is successful in chanting the Gayatri mantra, he can enter into the transcendental position of the Lord. One must therefore acquire Brahmanical qualities or be perfectly situated in the quality of goodness in order to chant the Gayatri mantra successfully and then attain to the stage of transcendentally realizing the Lord, his name, his fame, his qualities, and so on. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Kamal Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration of the Swarupa of the Lord manifested by his internal potency, and this potency is distinguished from the external potency which has manifested the cosmic world, which is within our experience. Srila Vyasadeva makes a clear distinction between the two in this sloka. Sri Vyasadeva says herein that the manifested internal potency is real, whereas the external manifested energy in the form of material existence is only temporary and illusory, like the mirage in the desert. In the desert mirage, there is no actual water. There is only the appearance of the water. Real water is somewhere else. The manifested cosmic creation appears as reality, but reality of which this is but a shadow is in the spiritual world. Absolute truth is in the spiritual sky, not the material sky. In the material sky, everything is relative truth. That is to say, one truth depends on something else. This cosmic creation results from interaction of the three modes of nature, and the temporary manifestations are so created as to present an illusion of reality to the bewildered mind of the conditioned soul, who appears in so many spaces of life, including the higher demigods like Brahma, Indra, Chandra, and so on. In actuality, there is no reality in the manifested world. There appears to be reality, however, because of the true reality which exists in the spiritual world, where the personality of Godhead externally exists with his transcendental paraphernalia. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Eternally exists, Prabhuji.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Eternally exists within his transcendental paraphernalia. Hare Krishna.
Complete difference, externally, eternally.
Devi Dasi Mataji.
Oh, she joined.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji.
No problem.
Prabhuji, I can't read Prabhuji. I'm not able to find my specs.
What
Hare
nonsense.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Read with your Jnana Chakshu.
I'll hear Prabhuji.
Okay, go ahead. Somebody else.
Radha Mohan Shyam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Oh, you're there.
Nathan Prabhuji.
Saturday, chutti.
Yes, Prabhuji. Okay, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The chief engineer of a complicated construction does not personally take part in the construction, but he knows every nook and corner because everything is done under his direction. He knows everything about the construction, both directly and indirectly. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, who is the supreme engineer of this cosmic creation, knows every nook and corner, although affairs are being carried out by demigods. Beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, no one is independent in the material creation. The hand of the Lord is seen everywhere. All material elements, as well as all spiritual sparks, emanate from Him only. And whatever is created in this material world is but the interaction of two energies, the material and the spiritual, which emanate from the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. A chemist can manufacture water in the chemical laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. But in reality, the living entity works in the laboratory under the direction of the Supreme Lord. And the materials with which he works are also supplied by the Lord. The Lord knows everything directly and indirectly. He is cognizant of all minute details, and he is fully independent. He is compared to a mine of gold, and the cosmic creations in so many different forms are compared to objects made from gold, such as gold rings, necklaces, and so on. The gold ring and gold necklace are qualitatively one and gold with the gold in the mine, but quantitatively the gold in the mine is different. Therefore, the absolute truth is simultaneously one and different. Nothing is absolutely equal with the absolute truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of the absolute truth. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Uh, Radhanuga Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Dhammam Pranam Prabhuji. Conditioned souls, conditioned souls beginning from Brahma, who engineers the entire universe, down to the insignificant ant, are all creating, but none of them are independent of the Supreme Lord. The materialist wrongly thinks that there is no creator other than his own self. This is called Maya or illusion. Because of his poor fund of knowledge, the materialist cannot see beyond the purview of his imperfect senses, and thus he thinks that matter automatically takes its own shape and without the aid of a superior intelligence. This is refuted in this shloka by Srila Vyasadeva, since the complete whole or the absolute truth is the source of everything. Nothing can be independent of the body of the absolute truth. Whatever happens to the body quickly becomes known to the embodied. Similarly, the creation is the body of the absolute whole. Therefore, the absolute knows everything directly and indirectly that happens in the creation. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Radharani Mataji.
In the Shruti mantra, it is also stated that the absolute whole or Brahma is the ultimate source of everything. Everything emanates from him, and everything is maintained by him. And at the end, everything enters into him. That is the law of nature. In the Smriti mantra, the same is confirmed. It is said that the source from which everything emanates at the beginning of Brahma's millennium and the reservoir to which everything ultimately enters is the absolute truth or Brahma. Material scientists take it for the granted that the ultimate source of the planetary system is the sun, but they are unable to explain the source of the sun. Herein, the ultimate source is explained. According to the Vedic literatures, Brahma, who may be compared to the sun, is not the ultimate creator. It is stated in this shloka that Brahma was taught Vedic knowledge by personality of Godhead. One may argue that Brahma, being the original living being, could not be inspired because there was no other being living at that time. Herein, it is stated that the Supreme Lord inspired the secondary creator Brahma in order that Brahma could carry out his creative functions. So, the supreme intelligence behind all creation is the absolute Godhead Sri Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna states that it is He only who superintends the creative energy, Prakriti, which constitutes the totality of matter. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva does not worship Brahma, but the Supreme Lord, who guides Brahma in his creative activities. In this shloka, the particular word Abhijanaha and Swarat are significant. These two
Abhijna,
words,
Abhijna,
Abhigya and
Jna,
Swarat,
Jna, Jna, Jna. Hold your nose. Abhijna.
Abhigya, that is, these two words distinguish the Supreme Lord from all the other living entities. No other living entity is either Abhigya or Swarat. That is, no one is either fully cognizant or fully independent. Even Brahma has to meditate upon the Supreme Lord in order to create. Then what to speak of great scientists like Einstein? The brains of such a scientist are certainly not the products of any human being. Scientists cannot manufacture such a brain. And what to speak of foolish atheists who defy the authority of the Lord? Even Mayavadi impersonalists who flatter themselves that they can become one with the Lord are neither Abhigya nor Swarat. Such impersonalists undergo severe austerities to acquire knowledge to become one with the Lord. But ultimately, they become dependent on some rich disciple who supplies them with money to build monasteries and temples. Atheists like Ravan or Hiranyakashipu had to undergo severe penances before they could flout the authority of the Lord. But ultimately, they were rendered helpless and could not save themselves when the Lord appeared before them as cruel death. This is also the case with the modern atheists who also dare to flout the authority of the Lord. Such atheists will be dealt with similarly, for history repeats itself. Whenever men neglect the authority of the Lord, nature and her laws are there to penalize them. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita in the well-known verse, Yada yada hi dharmasya glani. Whenever there is a decline of dharma and the rise of adharma, O Arjun, then I incarnate myself. Bhagavad Gita 4.7.
Vijay, I will continue the next one.
Yes, Mother. Yes, Prabhu.
Did Radha Madhavi read?
Prabhuji?
Did Radha Madhavi Mataji read?
Oh, no, Prabhuji, not yet.
Hare Krishna Prabhu neglected you.
You can continue, Mataji. I will read out.
No, Prabhuji, you read. I will read afterwards.
That the Supreme Lord is all perfect is confirmed in all Shruti mantras. It is said in the Shruti mantras that the all perfect Lord threw a glance over matter and thus created all living beings. The living beings are parts and parcels of the Lord, and he impregnates the vast material creation with seeds of spiritual sparks, and thus the creative energies are set in motion to enact so many wonderful creations. An atheist may argue that God is no more expert than a watchmaker, but of course God is greater because he can create machines in duplicate male and female forms. The male and female forms of different types of machineries go on producing innumerable similar machines without God's further attention. If a man could manufacture such a set of machines that could produce other machines without his attention, then he could approach the intelligence of God. But that is not possible, for each machine has to be handled individually. Therefore, no one can create as well as God. Another name for God is Asamurdhva.
Asamurdhva. Asamurdhva.
Asamurdhva.
Sama is equal, Urdhva is more. Sama is equal. Sama is equal, Urdhva is more or greater. So, Asamurdhva.
Asamurdhva, which means that no one is equal to or greater than him. Param Satyam, or the supreme truth, is he who has no equal or superior. This is confirmed in the Shruti mantras. It is said that before the creation of the material universe, there existed the Lord only, who is the master of everyone. That Lord instructed Brahma in Vedic knowledge. That Lord has to be obeyed in all respects. Anyone who wants to get rid of material entanglement must surrender unto him. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Radha Madhavi Mataji.
Unless one surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, it is certain that he will be bewildered. When an intelligent man surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna and knows completely that Krishna is the cause of all causes, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, then only can such an intelligent man become a Mahatma or great soul. But such a great soul is rarely seen. Only the Mahatmas can understand that the Supreme Lord is the primeval cause of all creations. He is Parma or ultimate truth because all other truths are relative to him. He is omniscient. For him, there is no illusion. Some Mayavadi scholars argue that Srimad Bhagavatam was not compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. And some of them suggest that this book is a modern creation written by someone named Vopadeva. In order to refute such meaningless arguments, Sridhar Swami points out that there is a reference to the Bhagavatam in many of the oldest Puranas. This first sloka of the Bhagavatam begins with the Gayatri mantra. There is a reference to this in the Matsya Purana, which is the oldest Purana. In that Purana, it is said, with the reference to the Gayatri mantra in the Bhagavatam, that there are many narrations of spiritual instructions beginning with the Gayatri mantra. And there is the history of Vritasura. Anyone who makes a gift of this great work on a full moon day attains to the highest perfection of life by returning to Godhead. There is a reference to Bhagavatam in other Puranas also, where it is clearly stated that this work was finished in 12 cantos, which includes 18,000 shlokas. In the Padma Purana also, there is a reference to the Bhagavatam in a conversation between Gautama and Maharaj Amrish. The king was advised therein to read regularly Srimad Bhagavatam if he desired liberation from the material bondage. Under the circumstances, there is no doubt about the authority of the Bhagavatam. Within the past 500 years, many erudite scholars and acharyas like Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Vallabhacharya, and many other distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam. And the serious student who would do well to attempt to go through them to better relish the transcendental messages. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Radhika Bhav Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Welcome.
Srila Vishwanath.
Joining us for the first time, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Good, welcome.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur specifically deals with the original and pure sex psychology, Adi Rasa, devoid of all mundane inebriety.
Inebriety means imbalance.
Thank you. The whole material creation is moving under the principle of sex life. In modern civilization, sex life is the focal point of all activities. Wherever one turns his face, he sees sex life predominate. Therefore, sex life is not unreal. Its reality is experienced in the spiritual world. The material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original fact. The original fact is in the absolute truth, and thus the absolute truth cannot be impersonal. It is not possible to be impersonal and contain pure sex life. Consequently, the impersonalist philosophers have given indirect impetus to the abominable mundane sex life.
I think you must be feeling hungry. That's why you said abdominal.
Because they have overstressed the impersonality of the ultimate truth. Consequently, men without information of the actual spiritual form of sex has accepted perverted material sex life as the all in all. There is a distinction between sex life in the diseased material condition and the spiritual sex life. This
You
Srimad
can,
Bhagavatam will gradually elevate the unbiased reader to the highest perfectional stage of transcendence. It will enable him to transcend the three modes of material activities, fruitive actions, speculative philosophy, and worship of functional deities as inculcated in Vedic verses.
Thank you. So I think it is about 9. So I think I'll describe a bit about the first verse. And if we have a little time, maybe we'll start the next 2 verses. Then onwards, we will continue reading and describing. Is anybody in a hurry to finish off Bhagavatam immediately, or we can keep going on?
I think, Prabhuji, we can keep going on. If
That's what I was
anyone
thinking.
else has any other opinion, yeah.
That's what I was thinking. That was my opinion. This is like a proper Bhagavatam study group. There are many online groups in the US which complete the whole Bhagavatam study like this. When we study in the Association of Devotees, it's much more effective. So I'm sitting here in Sri Radha Gopinath Temple, Chowpatty. Last night I was at Radha Raspberry Temple, Juhu. And hopefully in the evening I'll go to Radha Giridhari Temple, Meera Road. I come here for a meeting in the morning at 10 o'clock of the Annamrita Foundation, of which I serve as one of the trustees. So this very, very important chapter of a very, very important book. And in that we are dealing with probably one of the most important verses. So you want to just share the screen again, Hare Krishna Prabhu. I'll just take a few key points from Bhaktivedanta purpose, then I'll go into Acharyas. Yeah. So it's very clear that when you say Vasudeva, people can come up with many even impersonal interpretation. People say Vasudeva means like omnipresent, like Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. So Vasudha is the world. So many people have many interpretations, but it's very clear. It is Vasudeva directly indicates Sri Krishna, who is son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And therefore he asserts, it's mentioned that the very clear, the Paribhasha Sutra of Bhagavatam is Krishna to Bhagavan Swayam. So right from the beginning, this is being stressed. So Bhagavan, or the primeval Lord, is what is Krishna. That is of course our whole movement. And Prabhupada mentions here that of all the names for Krishna, the one most appropriate would be Krishna, because he's all attractive. This is the principal one, Prabhupada is saying. And Vasudeva is, of course, the quadruple expansion of Krishna as Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So that is also being indicated here when you say Vasudeva, all the different forms of the Lord. And like I mentioned earlier, Vasudeva particularly indicates the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Otherwise, other names could have been used. So I think the Omkara indicates about meditation as well. And therefore, Krishna is the person on whom all the Paramahamsas meditate upon. So Janma Adi means Janma and everything else, which is Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya, all of these. Bhagavatam is described as Amala Purana by Mahaprabhu, and it was written by Lord Sri Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadeva in the ripened stage of his spiritual wisdom under the instructions of Narad Muni, his guru. And it's a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, Brahmas Bhashyam Brahma Sutranam. And this he obviously wrote after compiling all other pieces of literature because he was not happy, as we will study later. So the first 9 cantos lead up to the 10th canto, the Summum Bonum, which talks about Krishna's transcendental pastimes. But before studying the substance of the Summum Bonum, one should go through the categories, Prabhupada says. So, which is why we study 9th canto, Parashurama and Lord Ramachandra, 8th canto, you have Vaman Deva and the Mohini Murti, Ajita, Sahasrabahu, various incarnations of the Lord. 7th canto, Narasimhadev. Like that. And before that, right from the beginning itself, 3rd canto, you have Lord Kapila, then you have Prithu Maharaj coming in later cantos, Rishabdev in the 5th canto. So all this is leading up to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna in the 10th canto. So Srila Prabhupada mentions here that it is natural to inquire, Athado Brahma Jijnasa, because we have a scientific bent of mind in general, a philosophical bent of mind. So Prabhupada uses the word philosophy here. Those who don't know, philos means love and sophos means knowledge. So it's love of knowledge, and this is the true knowledge. So various queries about something beyond us could raise in the minds of people who gaze at the sky. So all such queries are being answered by Lord, by Srila Vyasadeva. And then the fact is mentioned that he is who is the cause behind everything, Sarva Karana Karanam, cause behind all the things that are happening. So just like Prabhupada gives the example of how satellites and others are being floated, Prabhupada uses the tiny intelligence of human scientists. Why can't you imagine all these planets being floated across by the superior intelligence? And this belongs obviously to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is the chief amongst all living entities. So, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye, from his the first created living entity right down to the ant, they are all individual living entities. So, it's mentioned here like even above Brahma are several other living entities, and the topmost among them, who's a living entity, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord. He is acts through his inconceivable energy. Achintya Kalavi Bhava Nachas Tarkena Jujayet. Atams Tarkena Jujayet. It's that which is inconceivable, cannot be established by tarka, by logic. We cannot easily conceive of the supreme intelligence, the supreme being. So if seemingly amazing things can be produced by the human brain, it's natural to assume that there could be superior brains capable of producing superior things. And therefore, Prabhupada has always had been busy, nirvishesha shunyavadi. The scientists are effectively shunyavadi in that sense. So he says clearly again here, right from the beginning, very first verse, Prabhupada is bashing them, saying stubborn atheists would never agree against atheism. But Vyasadeva immediately accepts that this supreme intelligence is the Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything emanates. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita, Matta Parataram Nanyat Kinchit Asti Dhananjaya. He is a Paratattva. There's nothing beyond him. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. It's confirmed later on by Vyasadeva, Asita Devala, all these rishis also. So therefore, knowing all this truth, Vyasadeva worships Krishna, the Paratattva. And his leelas are gradually described, evolving into the 10th canto, which is the topmost. But many people go to the Rasa Panchadhyaya because of their understanding that these are mundane activities between young men and women. So, in order to reach to the 10th canto and higher realms of pastimes of the Lord, one needs to have a basic purified level of intelligence. So, which is Pancharatrika Vidhi is a means to purify one. And the Gayatri Mantra is one such thing. That is why it's Satyam Param Dhimahi. It is a Gayatri Mantra. And by gradually chanting the Gayatri Mantra, then one can develop the realization so as to understand the Lord's name, fame, qualities, pastimes, paraphernalia, etc. And Srimad Bhagavatam is a narration of the Swarupa of the Lord manifested by his internal potency. And this potency is distinguished from the external potency, which is manifested in the cosmic world, which is in our experience. So there is Ishvara, Jiva, and Prakriti. From the Ishvara's Chit Shakti manifests the spiritual world, the Jiva Shakti manifests the Jivas, and the Maya Shakti manifests the Prakriti, the external energy. But Krishna's spiritual world is manifested by his own potency. He himself manifests within his own potency. Sambhavami Atma Maya. But what we see, the material world around us, is an external manifestation of the Lord's energy. It is mentioned here like a mirage in the desert. The mirage has no actual water, but there is a perception. But what it does indicate is that there is real water somewhere else, definitely. So whatever we see in the cosmic world appears like a reality, but the actual reality is in the spiritual world. And that truth is the spiritual sky. Paravyoma, as it is called. It's not the material world, or which is the relative truth, which means it depends on another truth. So the existence of the material world in general exists upon the spiritual world. Like a jail depends on the city, not that the city depends on the jail. So the existence, very existence of the material world is also based on the fact that there is a reality beyond, which is the spiritual world, where he exists. Krishna exists with his transcendental paraphernalia. And it's mentioned that despite this, of course, Krishna doesn't personally partake in the material world, just like the Prabhupada gives the example of a chief engineer. He doesn't directly take part in the construction, but he knows every nook and corner of the construction. So quite similarly, Krishna's activities are carried out by the demigods. Parasya Shaktir Vivideva Shruyate. Sabhaviki Jnana Balai Kriyecha. Through his energies, through his demigods, his activities are carried out. So whatever is happening, it's a beautiful line that is given. That whatever is created, one thing is the hand of the Lord is seen everywhere. All energies, material and the spiritual, which emanate from the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So everything is under these two, Krishna's energies. And a chemical, there is this famous story of the scientist challenging God about how he can also create. So he says, okay, let's have a competition. He's about to create a man as he's taking the earth, some sand or whatever. God stops him saying, wait a minute, take your own earth. So in other words, everything comes from the Supreme Lord, the material or spiritual. It is just a question of how we use the energies. So the example given of the gold ring and the gold necklace are qualitatively one with the gold, but not quantitatively the same. Or we give the example of the sea water in a glass and the sea. So everything that we do is therefore under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Krishna is called Asama Urdhva. Nothing is absolutely equal and nothing is beyond. That is, nothing is independent. So from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, everybody is dependent on Krishna. We are dependent realities. So, but every person instead thinks that I am the creator. So this is called Maya or illusion. Prabhupada's beautiful usage, I've never heard it seen never heard it being used anywhere. Who are fond of knowledge. And so he cannot just see beyond imperfect senses. There is this author called D.S. Lawrence in English literature. He's known for writing slightly risk, RISQE, which means slightly unacceptable kind of language and storylines, focusing on mundane relationships, and mundane emotions, and mundane sex. So he writes that what the eye does not see and the ear does not hear, the mind does not know. So that just means that because they're poor fund of knowledge, they cannot think beyond the senses. So therefore, he thinks that matter can come by itself without a superior intelligence. So that is being smashed here by Vyasadeva. Since the complete whole or the absolute truth is the source of everything, nothing can be independent of the body of the absolute truth. Whatever happens to the body quickly becomes known to the embodied. Similarly, the creation is the body of the absolute truth. Therefore, the absolute knows everything directly and indirectly that happens in the creation. Janmadhyasya yato anvayad idara. Anvayad is directly, and itara means others indirectly. Also cause and effect. Anvaya and Vitireka. There is also another usage. So everything is known to the Supreme Lord because he is the creator and there is nothing beyond him. He acts through his energies. And it is mentioned here that everything is dependent on the Supreme Lord and he is in himself independent. Like Tasya Kartaram Apima Vidya Kartaram Avyayam. He's created Chaturvarnya Maya system based on Guna and Karma, but he himself is beyond the Varnashrama Dharma. Although he maintains the Varnashrama Dharma to set an example. And in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, we talk about Aham Sarvasya Prabhava Matta Sarvam Pravartate. Everything emanates from him. Everything is maintained by him. This is that shloka. And finally, everything enters into him, like the Vedas say, Yathova imani bhutani jayante. They are born. Yena jatani jivanti, sustained. Yat prayamya visamvishanti iti. They finally enter the Supreme Absolute. That is Krishna or the Brahman, absolute truth. Brahman is a word that is used variously for Bhagavan, Brahman, and Paramatma. He is the ultimate source of everything. Brahma is the original living being, and therefore no question of him being inspired. That could be an argument. But here it's mentioned here that the original intelligence is Sri Krishna. Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti. He superintends the Prakriti. This is totally matter. So therefore, Vyasadeva is not worshipping Brahma, but he instead worships the Supreme Lord. So Abhijna is all cognizant and Swarat is autonomous or independent. So nobody else can claim to be Abhijna and Swarat. Whoever is claiming that we are all gods or whatever, cannot say that we are Abhijna and Swarat. So it's mentioned here, even Brahma has to meditate to create. Tapa. There is austerity. So what to speak about mere scientists like Einstein? To do anything, they will need the Supreme Lord's sanction. But Prabhupada now smashes impersonalists that they flatter themselves that they can be Abhijna and Swarat or whatever. We can undergo austerities to become one with the Lord. But ultimately, it's mentioned here they become dependent on some rich disciple to build hospitals, monasteries, temples, mathas, all the monies. So Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, they denied the existence of God. Prabhupada is beautifully using the phrase, they were rendered helpless when Krishna appeared as cruel death, Kalo Asmin. So the same thing will happen to the modern atheist, Prabhupada is saying. It's a prediction of a pure devotee, although he is compassionate. Which is why to preach to the scientists, ISKCON had Bhaktivedanta Institute even during Prabhupada's time. Prabhupada was the first director or chairman of the institute. And Srila Bhakti Swarup Damodar Swami Maharaj was told that you preach to the scientists and you will go back to Godhead by the scientific preaching, which he did for a whole range of his time, entire lifetime. So, so what is mentioned here is that though Prabhupada is saying, for example, that the atheists will be penalized by the laws of nature and laws of God, he did not leave it at that. Because he is not envious. So therefore, he even created an opportunity to preach to the scientists about the supreme absolute truth. So this is mentioned by him as Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir. So whenever there is people flout the laws of nature and go against and everything, the Supreme Lord will appear himself by his empowered incarnation, through his representative or through scripture. And again, a scientist or an atheist may say that God is nothing more than a great watchmaker. But then Prabhupada says a very interesting point that God is greater because he can create so many forms which can replicate themselves. It's not like it ends with the creation of the form. Like a scientist could develop a very, very high-range robot, but it cannot replicate itself. Or in general, any living entity can replicate itself, but even a cloned entity can replicate itself. But the fact is that clone was created from the body of a living entity. So there's no question of a scientist equaling the capability or the impact of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is why he is Param Satyam. He is a Supreme Absolute Truth. Asamordhva, nothing equal to or greater than him. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. There is nothing that he cannot do. Nacha samacha abhyadikasya drishyate. Nobody is equal to him or greater than him. And therefore he acts through his energies. Parasya shaktir vividaiva shruyate. So that is the Supreme Absolute Truth. There is nobody equal to or greater than him. He instructed Brahmaji to create. He instructed him first with the Vedic knowledge. That means that he's so great that he has to be obeyed. And anybody who wants to get rid of his mental entanglement should therefore surrender to him. Tameva sharanam gaccha. It's mentioned. You have to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. Dina Sudham Prabhu, you can post that shloka from the Gita starting Tameva sharanam gaccha.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. I think it's in 13th chapter, I'm not very sure. And this is very, very important because unless a person surrenders to the Supreme Lord, he will be bewildered, Prabhupada is saying. It is not like he may be. It is certain that he will be bewildered. So that is why it is mentioned that Sagurum eva abhigached. You must approach a spiritual master. So it is certain when you are bewildered, dharma sammuta cheta, like Arjuna was, then it is imperative that you approach a spiritual master. And that is the process of surrender. Adho Guru Padashrayam. So surrender starts with surrender to the spiritual master. But those who surrender to the Supreme Lord and his energy are most rare. Some Mahatma Sudurlabha. Only so such Mahatmas can understand the Supreme Absolute Truth, which comes in the next shloka also. Ne Paramanarmat Saranam Satam is a pure devotee of the Lord, completely free of envy. So everything, he is omniscient, he is independent, free from illusion. Everything else depends on him. All the truths are relative to him. So some people say that somebody called Vopadeva had created. But authorities like Sridhar Swami are confirming that it's Vyasadeva, and it's being talked about even in many old Puranas like Matsya Purana, which is one of the oldest. And it's mentioned that the Gayatri Mantra is also mentioned in that. It is said with reference to the Gayatri Mantra in the Bhagavatam that there are many narrations of spiritual instructions beginning with the Gayatri Mantra. So, and there is a history of Vritrasura, anyone who makes a gift of this great work on a full moon day. Meaning history of Vritrasura is also mentioned in the Matsya Purana, which is there in the Bhagavatam.
Prabhuji, in which canto it is there, Prabhuji, Vritrasura story?
Vritrasura, I think it comes in 6th canto.
6th canto. Okay.
So, and it is wonderful Krishna's arrangement. We did not plan it. And here is the line. You highlight this line and post it on the group, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Anyone who makes a gift of this great work on a full moon day attains to the highest perfection of life by returning to Godhead. Bhadra Purnima Mahamotsavaki. So today is Bhadra Purnima. I saw recently that some of you already committed Bhagavatam sets. So this is most wonderful, topmost transcendental knowledge. And 12 cantos, 18,000 shlokas, all that is mentioned. So the Bhagavatam has 12 cantos, just like the sun travels through 12 forms in 12 months of the year, is mentioned. 18,000 verses, like the 18,000 petals of a lotus flower.
Prabhuji, here it is mentioned that on full moon day. So is it any full moon day or it's just Bhadra Purnima?
It says on a full moon day, but later on it comes, I think, in 12th canto that on a Bhadra Purnima, the month of Bhadra.
And it's today, Prabhuji?
Yes,
Right?
today is the
Yes.
day.
Right. Okay.
I'm supposed to address, there is an online yajna happening at 10:45. I'm supposed to address this global audience on behalf of NIDC. So, many great personalities have given elaborate commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam. What happened? You doing annotations?
Sorry, Prabhuji, by mistake.
I thought your kid was at work. So, it is important to study these commentaries also. So, I don't know if you have the time today, otherwise I'll speak a little bit from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Just go down. Oh, we reached the end of the purport, not bad. So, because of this, with this we have discussed in various forums. Adi Rasa exists in the Supreme Lord because he is a person. But mundane scholars and atheists and scientists and impersonalists have, primarily the impersonalists, Prabhupada says, have called the Supreme Truth as having no variety and as not a person. So then what happens? So he doesn't have any stress on this Adi Rasa. So when you say Janmadhyasya, it also indicates the Adi Rasa according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So the Supreme Absolute Truth cannot be impersonal. So if he had been impersonal, he could not have had pure sex life, which is the Rasa Lila and so on and so forth, and Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. So therefore, instead of focusing on the pure sex life of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Dharma Aviruddha Bhuteshu Kamosmi, the Supreme Absolute Truth cannot have sex life, so it is not pure. So the perverted version is present in the material world. Therefore, there has been given indirect impetus because of the fact that they have said that the Supreme Absolute Truth is impersonal. So, man doesn't know what is Adi Rasa. Therefore, he deals being conditioned in perverted material sex life. There's a distinction between sex life in the deceased material condition and spiritual sex life. So gradually, the living entity and the reader will be elevated to the highest level of perfectional stage of transcendence. It can help him transcend the three modes: karma, jnana, and karmakanta. In Vedic words, Traigunya Vishya Veda, everything, whatever is mentioned, all that can be overcome. Okay, so with this we complete the first chapter, first canto, first shloka. If you have any questions, we can take one or two questions. And next week we will continue with the second and third verses, and more verses we'll read, but we will focus on describing the second and third. Questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
Dhanavad. You can unshare the screen now. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes, Mantari.
Yeah, actually, yesterday I was reading Chaturshloki Bhagavatam,
Mm.
and where Krishna establishes the same, facts what we are reading today.
Yeah.
So very nicely Prabhupada has explained the purpose. So we can always refer those 4 shlokas also.
Yes, that comes in second canto. So why don't you post the Chaturshloki in the group? That on Bhadra Purnima, people can read the whole Bhagavatam that way. Very good. Thank you. So you are, because you're doing Bhakti Vaibhav, now you're rushing ahead of others.
No, it is not because of that, Prabhuji.
Second
It was
canto.
accidentally I was reading.
Yes, questions, comments. We have, it's your hand raised, right? Or is it, no, it's Bharati Madan Mataji. Yes, Bharati Madan Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji. And then there is
Prabhuji, I have a doubt that why this first canto is called creation. Because in full canto, there is discussion of Parikshit Maharaj and how this came, how Bhagavatam came, Narad Muni, and how Parikshit Maharaj was born. All this was discussed. In the second canto, we discussed something about creation, Mahatattva and everything. Even in third canto, Maitri Muni is telling Vidura about the creation. Why first canto is called creation? This is my question.
See, one important thing to understand, the 10 subject matters of Bhagavatam, it is not like they are in a sequence. They can all be found in 10. One of the topic is Sarga. Sarga, Visarga, Thanam, Poshanam, Uti. So all these 10 topics are effectively present in all the cantos. But the priority in that canto is how the topic is stressed on. So the important thing to understand in creation is it is not just the creation of the material universe. It establishes of course, Sarga generally means the creation of the universe. But just one second, I was reading something interesting. Jiva Goswami mentions that the 10 principal topics of Srimad Bhagavatam are found within each of the 12 cantos. He also says that one should not try to assign each of the 10 topics to a particular canto. Nor should the Srimad Bhagavatam be artificially interpreted to show that it deals with the topics successively. The simple fact is that all aspects of knowledge important to human beings, summarized in the 10 categories mentioned above, are described with various degrees of emphasis and analysis throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. This proper disciples mentioned in the 12th canto, 7th chapter. Although each topic is emphasized prominently in a particular canto of the Bhagavatam, The other topics are also discussed in those cantos, but with a lesser emphasis. A careful study will reveal that Sarga, which is primary creation, is prominently found in the third canto, Visarga in the fourth canto, Sthanam in the fifth canto, Poshana in the sixth, Uti in the seventh, Manvantara in the eighth, Ishanukata in the ninth, Nirodha in the 12th, Mukti in the 11th, and Ashraya in the 10th. While the other topics are also found in these cantos with lesser prominence. So this is very important to understand. So one more point. The first canto basically introduces very key important elements like Bhakti, Bhagavan, Bhakta, Bhagavatam. These are all the foundational understanding for a devotee. And they also all the important characters of Bhagavatam. Parikshit, Shukdev, Goswami, Vyasadev, Narada, Vidura, Lord Krishna, all this is mentioned. So right at the beginning, there is a description of the supreme absolute truth and the highest purpose of religion. So therefore, the main reason it is called Sarga is one, because it talks about the Supreme Lord as the source of all creation. Right at the first sloka, he is the source of everything. Janmati Asya. The first word of Bhagavatam after Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which is an invocation, is Janma. And that Janma is creation. So it establishes the fact as who is the source of creation. And in further cantos, this creation is being further elaborated through various elements. So that is one reason it is called Sarga. The other reason, which is very interesting, we can conceive of it, is that the origin of Srimad Bhagavatam itself is described in the first canto. It's not just the origin of the universe. That is also mentioned as to how the Bhagavatam was compiled and how it began. So we must understand clearly, therefore, that it is Sarga is given preeminence because it establishes Krishna as the source of all creation. Is that fine?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Dinasudam Prabhu.
हरे कृष्ण दड़ोदना प्रभु जी एक कोट आता है यस्मिन तुष्टे जगत तुष्टम तो बट हाउ डू वी अंडरस्टैंड दिस बिकॉज उसमें एग्जांपल आता है कि लाइक वी इफ वी water the roots all the leaves get
that is from Bhagavatam Yatha Tarur Milani Sechlen, I think 5th canto.
But we see like in devotees life, I mean, although we try to please Krishna, but it is not the fact. I mean, we satisfy everyone. I mean, how to understand that? I mean, what is we lacking as a devotee or?
No, it is just an element of how evolved is your consciousness. Because the symptom of bhava is namagane sadaruchi, always interested and engrossed in glorifying the Lord. Pritistad vasatistale, being situated in the holy abode of the Lord. You relish that. Tad guna kyane asakti, to be attached to the glorification of the Supreme Lord. Avyartha kalatvam, 24 hours in service of the Lord. Samutkanta, forever anxious to serve the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Asha Bandha, forever hopeful that the Supreme Lord will be mercifully protecting us. So when the degree to which one is advancing in bhakti, these qualities will manifest. So then one will become increasingly understanding of the fact that yatha tarur mula nisechnena pranobahara cha yathendriyana tadeva sarvarhanam achyutejya. Similarly, worshipping the Supreme Lord will please everyone. This understanding will come commensurate with the level of one advancing in Krishna consciousness. So at that very high level of Krishna consciousness, one knows that pleasing Krishna is enough. You don't need anything else. So till then, that is why it is said there is purificatory varnashram dharma, so that one does not degenerate into mundane philosophies and sense gratification, mundane sense gratification. And similarly, Pancharatrikavati is prescribed for gradual purification. So we have to, and principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. One has to keep performing these before one evolves to the level of spontaneous devotional attraction to the Lord. At that level, one will be very clear that I only need to Yasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam. I only have to please the Lord. Till then, just like before you reach 16 round, you at least chanting 2 rounds. Similarly, you try and please the Supreme Lord to the extent that you can. And in that, you will feel happy. And then gradually, as one progresses, one develops more attachment to everything related to Krishna. One naturally develops a distaste for something that is not related to Krishna. So that's the way it evolves.
Yes, this question was asked actually, and I mean, in practical situations, we see, I mean, people are always envious or I mean, not satisfied with us, and somebody quoted like when Krishna himself was present, there were people who were envious to Krishna. I mean, they were not satisfied with Krishna.
Yeah. So
I mean, when Krishna himself was here, people were not satisfied. So how can we satisfy everyone by satisfying Krishna?
Okay. So the point is that those people who did not understand the sweetness of Krishna did not recognize him. They could see him, but they couldn't recognize his sweetness. That's what happened between the difference between Duryodhana and Vidura, or Duryodhana and Yudhishthira. Acharyas confirmed that it is not like they could not see him, but they just could not recognize his sweetness. So that is a function of our consciousness. Like when you say others are envious of us, the thought is itself wrong. Envy exists within our hearts. We cannot say that everybody else is envious of me. It's like that old man being told by his wife. I keep giving this example. Remember? Says that, please watch out. There is a madman driving against the traffic on the highway. So the old man answers saying, there's not one. There are thousands of them driving against the traffic. So what does it mean? It just means that we address our consciousness. We address our consciousness, and commensurate with that, we'll realize the Lord. Those who couldn't realize the Lord is because their consciousness was not evolved. So that is why they are not trying to please him. They did not realize his sweetness. They didn't try to please him. They try to please him, then they will know that everything else is pleased by that. Or they will at least be favorable to those who are favorable to the Lord. At least they will not disturb them. They'll remain well wishers. So all this is an index of how advanced you are in spiritual life. You cannot really expect everybody to accept the Lord, because we are here because we are in various proportions envious of Krishna. So till the time that is overcome by developing a healthy state of attraction to Krishna and his devotees and his name, form, qualities, pastime, paraphernalia, one will constantly feel that it's not worth it. Or will this be sufficient? These doubts come in. That is why Krishna says, Samshayatma vinashyati. The doubting soul, there is no redemption in this birth and the next. So therefore, all we can do is to ensure our consciousness is addressed, and subject to the consciousness being purified, we will be able to realize the Lord. We will be able to realize his omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, so on and so forth. And the degree to which we are convinced, we can convince others. That will help people being attracted to the Supreme Lord, and also being attracted to the devotional process which is given by devotees. So if people are disturbing you, even in the devotional life or on the periphery of devotional life, it's to do with you also. It's not to do with them. Why should you be disturbed if they are disturbing us? That means our Krishna consciousness is not evolved. I'm not saying you as in you. One. For all of us, that applies. If anything disturbs us other than anxiety to serve Krishna, it just clearly means we are less Krishna conscious. It doesn't matter whether others recognize Krishna, whether others are favorable or not. How convinced are we about our Krishna consciousness? And that will transfer the faith to others. Is that fine?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking that question. I don't know if I answered you.
No, I mean, the last point, I think it's well taken. I mean, it's one's consciousness, I mean, which decides, because if we think others are not, if I'm trying to please Krishna and if I see others like they are not satisfied with Krishna, so it means there is some problem with the one's consciousness.
Yeah, and also we are trying to please them.
Yes.
That they're, we're giving value to their. Prabhupada used to say, what is the value of your thinking? Rascal, I kick on your foot. Prabhupada used to say like that. We can't.
Yes, but like.
Okay, so let's conclude today's session. We started late, so we finished late accordingly. We finished at around 9:07. It started at 8:15. It was 8 to 9:30. So it's effectively 8:15 to 9:45. Thank you for joining me, and we will continue with the next session on next Saturday, which is the 17th. But there was some plan, no, for a yatra, Dinaswam group, for the Ashray group, that's 24th.
Yes, Prabhuji, today we have a class and I'll check the availability of, if there are less people, then we may club some more.
Club with a couple of groups,
Yeah.
both the other groups, new groups that have come in. We'll address the general Japa seminar and certificates to your team anyway. That you have to tell them. So if they don't come for that, then it becomes.
I forgot to tell you, Prabhuji, I mean, the template of the certificate. You asked me to remind you.
Yes. So I have to give you the template, or you will send me something and I'll edit it.
We have.
You have to get the logo. They get the logo. I think why don't you check with? Just send me a reminder today. I'll just speak with Sarvapri Prabhu and get you. There is a standard template.
Yes, please.
Okay, so you have Yugala Rasika Mati. Are you still on the call or you left?
I'm there.
Yeah. So has your Ashray group started?
Tomorrow will be the first session, Prabhuji, because last time it was Radhashtami. We'll start tomorrow.
Okay. What time is it? 5 o'clock?
Yes, 5 o'clock.
Okay. It may be difficult for you for me because I have a lecture at Sahibabad tomorrow. So I guess Dinasudam Prabhu, you'll be there tomorrow?
Yes, Prabhuji, I am available, so I can.
So you can be there. And I can come for future sessions for sure. Because anyway, I was there for your first session, I think, your group's first session. Okay, all the best. Yes. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Prabhuji, we need to be added to the Shastra Chakshu group.
Oh. Radhanu Mataji.
Prabhuji?
Just post their numbers on the group and you can add them, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Post Radhamohan Shyam and Radhamadi Mataji's numbers.
Okay, Prabhuji.
You can add Swadhyaya Prabhu, you are also admin, no?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So you can add them, no? Radha Madhavi Mataji and Radhamohan Shyam.
They are not in the group, Prabhu.
Apparently.
Okay, I will add Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
We will chant once Hare Krishna and for
yes,
the refractory class. Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Ram,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.